Welcome back to another episode of the Outcast Hunting Podcast. We got a little bit different today. It's just me and Jantzen today. We're just going to talk about some deer season preparation stuff we've got going on. Maybe some new properties that we've got access to, and basically just get our deer season lined up. But we're going to record it.
Yep.
So what's new with you? What do your properties look like? What have you been doing to prepare for deer season, if anything?
Well, I pulled my cameras not too long ago. I pulled them all out, which I waited a little late to do that. So, anyways, I pulled all my cameras out. I got to get my cameras back in the woods to get some inventory and what's going on. But like we've talked about before, you have started going in mid to late summer trying to get what you got on
July
on
4th is when I usually start.
July 4th,
I started early this year, though, because I was really itching to go.
There you go. So you start around July 4th, starting to get inventory, see what you got on your property. But usually I start when it starts to cool off a little bit, somewhere around September, maybe the August, end of August. I'll start prepping my places and doing stuff, going in, cutting trails to my lock-ons, stands, whatever it may be. But this year, I told you that I was going to start a little early this year, but here it is. I ain't got my cameras out. I ain't done a whole lot of nothing. And August is upon us. So,
it really is hard, though, especially when you got a family.
Yeah.
I mean, finding time to get out there. It's easier for me because I'm a teacher. I'm off during the summer.
Right.
So it's easier for me to get started. But you're working year-round.
Year-round, buddy. Year-round. And then training dogs and doing different things like that. It's hard to find time to get out there and do it. And when you get home and it's 90 degrees outside, it's hard to think about, deer hunting when it's 90 degrees. And around this time of the year, the deer are growing their antlers, but you can't tell a whole lot about them. They look like clubs on their head. You can tell if he's going to be a decent deer, if he's going to be a spike or a 6-pointer, something like that, something small.
Yeah.
So if you got a giant on your property, you can tell he's going to be a good deer. But I like when I can see what he is instead of what he's going to become. But I am excited to start maybe trying to get out and and start doing like you do and just getting inventory, seeing what my bucks are, seeing what my bachelor groups look like on my property. Because last year, I wish I would have got my stuff out earlier to see what I had on my creek down at my own property and up. Because I say that because I told you last year you already had bucks on camera last year, and I didn't even have cameras out. And you were sending me pictures of bachelor groups with good bucks in, and you killed one of the bucks that you had in your bachelor group early season. And so I feel like if I would have done that, I would have spent more time down by the creek at my own property, because I did have, I think it was early October, the beginning of bow season. I sent you a video of like 4 bucks walking through. I think there was a spike and a 4-point, but there was 2 8-points. And I think one of them was a 9-point. It had a fork on the very back side of his G2. He was the one I would have liked to have gotten. He was really wide, not real tall, but he was a good deer. But I wish I'd have known he was there, because when I found out he was there and the other 8-point was there, which was a good one too, they were both shooters. Either one would have gotten shot if it had come by. But I wish I'd have known they were there before I knew that they were there, if you get what I'm saying, because I would have spent more time down there on them before I ever killed Kicker. I would have spent more time there on my creek if I'd have known they were there, but I didn't know they were there. And by the time I knew that they were there, and another thing we'll get into later is when I found out they were there, I started baiting. And it was probably 3 or 4 days later, I got a few pictures within them 4 days of them deer coming back in, vanished.
All right, so I think that's good, because I was wanting to ask you a question. And we talked before, but I can't remember if it was on a podcast or not. But just in case it was not, let me kind of rehash my thoughts on the baiting. Over the past few years, I know of a couple of buck spots that had good bucks in it, or good numbers of bucks. one spot was during the summer when I'm talking about this, but one spot was during deer season when they should have already transitioned to a different area if they were going to. I put bait out, and long story short, it's like the bucks just slowly quit coming in. And I think that they totally went to now keep in mind the properties that I'm hunting are kind of small. So they could have just went to one property over. But regardless, I lost access to those bucks, I feel like. And then a bunch of does move in. And, especially during the summer, if there's does there, bucks aren't going to be around. They're going to hang separate. Basically, what I'm getting at, I think
pretty much you pushed them out of their core area.
That's
what
really
you feel like, anyway.
That's what I feel like I did.
Yeah.
And now I could be totally wrong. And there's probably going to be somebody listening to this that baits all the time and has totally different results. But that's just what I've been noticing.
Yeah.
It seems like the bait does more harm than good. Could be that I'm going in there too much to replenish the bait. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I see guys all the time baiting. I got buddies that bait all the time and have good luck doing it. But here's my outlook on that is I think if you've got a small block of property that you're hunting that you've got bucks on, and that may be their core area, their home range, whatever it may be, but they're sticking to that small block, and you're getting very, very, you're getting a lot of pictures of them deer without bait being there. I do think that going in, putting your cameras up without bait, just to see what inventory you got without bait, to see if it's a travel route, to see what's coming in, I think that's a good idea before you go down and start baiting. If you absolutely have no deer on that small block, or that let's say, sometimes I guess you could call it e-scouting, but if you have neighbors that are Facebook friends or something like that, we saw that one of your neighbors had killed a buck that you were after last year. You can that's a form of e-scouting, but if I know that my neighbor's got big bucks on his property and I don't have anything on my property and it's a small block, I think baiting is a good idea because it may bring bucks. They're not on your place. You know what I mean? They're not living on your property. If you find a small block that bucks are living on your small block, yours is the area that everybody wishes they could have, but yours is the area. I feel like maybe baiting's not a good idea because you may be pushing them out, and it's something that they're not used to seeing. But if a deer comes from a neighboring property and there's deer over there and you're trying to bait them to that property, I think it's a good idea to bait. The reason for that is because you're not pushing them out when you go in, because they're coming over in the afternoons or early in the mornings to feed, and they're coming over, and when they see that bait, I do personally think that bucks can see a bait pile and think that's not normal, and that's not something I see every day.
Definitely.
So they're very spooky at that bait pile. They'll eat out of it. Don't get me wrong. They'll eat the corn or whatever you put out, but
they are so skittish while
they're
doing
on edge the whole time they're there. Yes, absolutely. And I've seen that has folded out in front of me in the deer stand. I've watched good bucks come to a bait pile, and the whole time they're there, they're scared to death. It seems like anyways.
And I think that's probably where I messed up too, because one spot was early season, and during early season, if you get pictures of bachelor groups of bucks before they have transitioned, you're in their home range, like they're nearby because they're not going to venture too far. And I was getting great daytime pictures, so that could have been it.
Yeah.
Probably wasn't a need to bait there. The other spot, I really think it was so small. Looking back, because this was several years ago, looking back, I really think there's a good chance that I just overpressured that area, and they said, heck with this.
Yeah.
Because I got so excited about it. But I don't know, it's just something that I'm cautious and leery of going forward. When I get a new property, and now, instead of immediately putting bait out to get inventory, I'm trying to get inventory of what's on that property by other means.
Right.
So what I did on one property that I recently got access to, I took all the cameras I had available, which was like 5 or 6, and I just went and hung them in different places that I thought would be good for for example, one spot was there's a ridge that has a pretty steep drop off going into the creek, but there's a bench along the side of it. And for around here, I think that's kind of not as common as some of the places up north to get those little terrain features.
Right.
But on that bench, there was a bunch of greenbrier, and you could tell that the deer had been feeding on it. So I put a camera up right there. Creek crossings, I put some up right there. And then some 2-track roads because, again, it's still summertime, deer season far away. They're not getting pressured right now, so I think they'll be traveling those roads.
Yeah.
And, well, I know they are because I've gotten pictures by now. But anyway, I put it up there just to see what's in the area.
Yeah.
And there's a bachelor group of bucks, 3 bucks, and nothing really great yet, I don't think. Some of the pictures, it's hard to tell about one of them. But anyway, I'm holding out hope. But yeah, that was kind of where I came at, though. If I didn't get something on camera, then I would bait and try to draw something in to see what's on the surrounding properties, I guess.
Right.
But here's another question I wanted to ask you, and this is something that I was thinking about yesterday. There'd be a lot of perks to this if it worked. You wouldn't have to buy as much bait. You wouldn't have to be visiting areas to put the bait out and pressuring those deer. But there's a lot of guys that use mock scrapes to bring deer nearby.
Yeah.
Now, my immediate thoughts is that's not going to bring deer from surrounding properties. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
And if I am, I'm sure someone will correct me, and that's fine. But I just don't think that's going to bring the deer from quote unquote far and wide to your area to see what's around.
Yeah.
I think it's more going to be a smaller zone. The deer inside this smaller zone is going to come check this out.
Maybe a buck that's already established his ground.
Yeah.
And something is foreign coming into his property.
So you would have to make the mock scrape in a good buck area to see if there's something in there. But what's your thoughts on using that for inventory early season instead of bait?
I think it's more natural, that's for sure.
Do you think it'll be as effective?
I do, like you said. I could be totally wrong, just like you. I could be way out in left field on this, but do I think that, like you said, it's going to bring other big bucks, unless they walk by it and they are an aggressive buck that's looking for a new home area or a core area to live in. Now, you may get a buck come through that's a new buck that's trying to look for something like that, but for it to bring other deer in, I don't know that it would be something I would do to bring other deer in from neighboring properties. But if you have a place like you usually do, which is where bucks live, in the early season, I do think that's a more natural way of going in, getting them to come to that area more often. To be honest with you, with a bait pile, very few big bucks that I've ever killed has come into a bait pile and just sit there and ate like does. You know what I mean? They come in, they may get them a mouthful, and then they leave.
They're there about 2 or 3
minutes. They don't sit there. They don't eat all afternoon long like does do. Or the bucks I've killed have come by on trails. They've come by on a trail, never paid the bait any attention, and went right on by. And I've had to shoot them on the go or stop them, but they've never come out and just sat around the bait pile. So I think the mock scrape is a good way for the deer to come through, check it out, and it may get them to come by more often too. I think that's a good way. I think it's a more natural way instead of just pouring out a bag of corn.
It's something that I've been experimenting with for a while now.
You had a lot of luck with it last year, though.
I did,
because you kept sending me pictures, which turned me to it. I had seen a lot of guys on TV where they were making TV podcasts, listening to other people's podcasts. They would make mock scrapes. Well, you started doing a lot of the mock scrape. I think maybe the year before last you were doing a little bit, right. But last year you really hit it hard on the mock scrapes, and you had a lot of luck, which I tried a few mock scrapes myself after I saw that you were having luck doing it.
Did they work?
And I did have a few. Well, here's the problem. I tried it there at my house, on the creek there at my house, and here's the problem with that place that I've got there. It's 8 acres of property. I've killed a few good bucks in that 8 acres of woods, but I'm mostly trying to do exactly what we were just talking about. I'm trying to bring them off my neighboring property to come into my property, and I just do the best I can with that. But yes, I did have a few. I had a few small bucks that would come in to feed, so I had bait and mock scrape.
Yeah.
But I'd have a few come in to feed, and they would check that mock scrape, or I actually had does check it more than I did bucks.
Well, that's really how I've been doing the mock scrapes, because I've called myself experimenting with it the past couple of years, because I see where guys have such luck with it, and it's one of those things that like I don't know how to describe this. I have confidence in, but there's just something about if you've used bait all of your life to get inventory on deer that's in an area, you feel like you're not getting the full picture that you could be if you don't put that out again, because it's what you're used to.
Right.
And in case you can't tell, like I'm really wanting to make a move to not use any bait, because I'll be honest with you, I'm tired of buying it, and I'm tired of going into these spots and feeling like I'm adding more pressure to the deer. One spot I know the deer patterned me going in and putting bait out. Well, it's Santa that I killed.
Yeah.
That deer patterned me going in there and putting bait. And I still want to tell that story about how I got one over on him. But
Shoot.
it'll come in a future podcast.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that's what I'm going to do. As a matter of fact, when we leave here today, I'm going to another spot that I have access to and scout it out for the first time. And according to the e-scouting, it's supposed to be a real bucky area.
Right.
Very diverse, got water nearby. So I'm probably going to put a mock scrape out, no bait, and see.
You know, here's the thing about.
Now,
go ahead.
Before you go, I will say you mentioned that you got a lot of does hitting yours.
Yeah.
In my experience, putting the mock scrapes out,
I say a lot of those. It may have been the same one every time.
but they're hitting it though.
But they're hitting it. Yeah.
You do have to get the does and the fawns to hit it first before the bucks will.
Really.
In my experience, before the bucks hit it, the does and fawns are going to. But once you get them hitting it, they keep it going.
Really.
And
so it's almost like a living document, pretty much. It's where they keep using that mock scrape that you set out, and they keep it going for you instead of you having to go in so much to try to, to freshen it up or something like that. Just let the deer keep it going.
And I've tried different things that you see on the internet or people doing. Some people say you pee in the scrape. I did that. Some people say just kick the dirt out, have a vine or some kind of branch, for them to have a licking branch on. But the best luck that I had with it was last year, and I got I would rake out a huge area. And when I say a huge area, it's really obnoxious size scrape. About the size of this table here, and it's about a little over 3 feet.
Yeah.
In diameter. Where it's just fresh dirt and have it loose dirt. And if you can carry in some dirt that's off-site, like from your house or something, and sprinkle it in. I did that a time or two. I think it made a difference. But what I think really helped get it jump-started was buying some pre-orbital gland scent, and whatever my licking branch is, putting some of that on there.
Put it on it.
And leave it. And it's going to take a couple of days, 2 or 3 days for the deer to get acclimated to it. And I guess for the human scent to wear away, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I like it. I think it's a good tool to use. And it's something that you can hang a camera over. And I do feel comfortable about getting inventory of deer as the pre-rut and rut comes closer.
Yeah.
Because I got a lot of traffic on mine last year during that time.
I will tell you this. The mock scrape is good. The only thing is I've seen where people put a rope or something like that, fray it at the end, put a little bit of stuff.
It's not natural, though.
And it didn't work for me last year until I put an oak branch. I actually placed an oak branch over my mock scrape, about chest high, maybe something like that. And then I actually had deer start using it more than just a rope hanging from a tree. I don't know if it was because it wasn't natural. Can they tell the difference between a rope and a vine or something hanging down? But I do think that most bucks they use every time I see a scrape, a natural scrape, it's under a sticky hardwood branch or like what do we call it? Yopalm. There's a lot of scrapes under Yopalm. And I don't know I don't know why that is. Maybe they thrash their horns in it. They like to thrash their horns in it or something. But I had more luck when I put an oak branch up instead of putting a rope hanging from a tree. And I've seen guys do that, put a rope on a tree on TV, but it just didn't work for me.
Yeah, and that could probably vary by area because the properties that I've hunted, Yopon is generally what I see scrapes under, and they're using that as a licking branch. There's another type of tree that I see a lot, but I don't know the name of the tree because I'm bad with tree names.
Yeah.
But I know it when I see it. But what I'm getting at is if you see like on a property that you hunt where there's a lot of scrapes under Yopons or oaks in your example, whatever, you can create a mock scrape using that.
Right.
And because it's what the deer are accustomed to.
Right.
It's more natural to them.
I know what I was going to say earlier. I think back to the baiting and the mock scrape stuff, I think that in South Alabama, we don't have harsh winters that kills everything off. Up north, wherever, they have harsh winters. Certain times of the year where they pour corn out, well, the snow has covered 1 foot, 2 foot of everything else. So you got fields that freeze up with snow. It's a foot. So you can clear something out, pour a bag of corn out, and the deer's got to eat, so they want to come to it. Here, deer will eat just about anything. So they can graze through the woods. I think to kill a good mature buck in South Alabama, you have to find a travel route to kill him. And that travel route sometimes, like I killed a good buck last year. You killed a good buck last year. Talon killed a good buck last year. You killed yours in a field, on the edge of a field. I killed mine, and Talon killed his, same power line. Do I think it's coincidence? No. We hunted hard. We killed the deer by doing homework and stuff like that. But there's so many travel routes that comes out into that field, and what we did was we timed them up. But if you actually want to get in the woods to kill a good buck, I think baiting, if baiting works for you, great. If mock scrape works for you, great. But I think if you want to kill a good buck, you have to find his travel route. You have to get on that travel route and go with that travel route to kill a good buck. And the reason for that is because you can bait in South Alabama. Yeah, it'll bring a few does. It'll bring some other deer around. If he's an aggressive deer, he's going to come and run them away. He's not going to want to come in, or he's going to want to come in and check it out. But the thing is, he can eat anywhere he goes. Even in the worst of winters we have down here, there's still Yopalms. There's still all kinds of things they can graze on down here. You got farmers' fields with corn in them. You've got farmers' field with peas, soybean. I mean, it's everywhere, and it's overabundance.
Yeah.
So to kill a good mature buck in Alabama, I think you've got to find that travel route that he likes and try to kill him that way. So you can throw out all the bait or whatever you want to do. You can throw it out all you want, and you may kill a good buck from time to time. But if you get a specific buck that you're trying to chase and he's a good monster buck, whatever it may be, you may have a 120. But if you want to kill that one deer, you may luck up by sitting over a bait pile off on the back 20 somewhere because I don't know, maybe he messed up his route that day. He come over to you. But to actually have a good chance and to go in and kill him, you got to find where he's coming from, and you got to get on that trail. Whether you put bait out, whether you do anything, you've got to find where he's coming from and try to get there and try to kill him on his travel route. And the reason I say that is because these deer down here, they have so much to eat that it's ridiculous. They don't have to, like you said earlier, you on your new property, you've got what do you call it?
Greenbrier? Kudzu?
No, kudzu. You got kudzu this time of the year. If deer have something to eat and they feel comfortable in that spot, they don't have to go far. Mm-hmm. They can live on that kudzu for a long time. So I think you just got to get on a travel route, and you got to do, and in my opinion, throwing bait out on a travel route may not be the best idea. I think, in my opinion, if I do want him to come by and stop or come by on that travel route and check it out more often, I'd probably do a mock scrape before I threw bait out on that travel route, if I found his travel route.
Yeah.
Because it's more natural, you know. And another thing, another tip that I learned a long time ago from my dad, and why he did it, why he started doing it, I don't know. But it also keeps your bait out a little longer, it seems like to me. But I never pile my corn up. Never plan on piling my corn up. I just go in and I broadcast it. I broadcast it everywhere and spread it out. If I can get that buck in there, and I know some people, they'll make lanes going in and, you know, for bow hunting and all, and they'll pour their corn out in a big pile, and they want that deer to be right there in that specific spot because that's where my shot's going to be. If I can just get that deer somewhere in my vicinity here, you know, in my range, by broadcasting that corn out, one, in my opinion, it's not as spooky because it's broadcasted out, and they can't see it coming from 100 yards off, you know, or I wouldn't say 100 yards off, but they can't see that pile of corn from 50 yards back and think, well, that's not natural. That hadn't always been there.
Right.
What is that, you know? They can't see it until they get up on it, and then they start grazing like they do for acorns and stuff like that, and they graze and they find the corn. So I've always just broadcasted mine. Now I got some buddies they swear by, I want him right here and I want to shoot him right there in that one spot right there in that lane. But if I can get him in my area here, I can find a shot somewhere somehow. If I can just get him somewhere close by.
I didn't do that until you mentioned it to me a couple seasons ago, but I started broadcasting it far like that, and I mean like 30 yards wide.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as you can throw it.
Throw it, yeah, absolutely.
I do have better luck with that.
Yeah.
And I think it does seem to last a little bit longer.
Right.
So I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
That was something you told me about a couple seasons ago, and it does work. Well, any other new properties?
I got a property in Op that I got last year at the end of season. Nice piece of property. I think it's about 40 acres. But the guy lives behind me. And it's got a creek that runs down. It's got a creek that runs through it, and the only thing is on the back side of that creek, it butts up to 200 acres that a farmer has, and what he's got in his fields up there, I have no clue what he's planted this year. I hadn't checked it, but I'm going to check that one out this year. I had a good buck on camera at the end of season last year, but me and Tyler were after Houdini. And we didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to them deer over there. I would get off work sometimes. I'd go over and sit on the ground and just see what I saw coming out in the afternoons. But it's a 40-acre piece. It's got a little place. It's got a pad like somebody wanted to build a house at one time there, but they never did build the house. So that's where I sat on the ground. I was just watching that open area, and it has grown up in sage. Deer trails going in and out, rubs on trees out there in that sage everywhere. But I think this year I got permission last year at the end of season. It was during the rut. I didn't want to go in tracking through there, messing everything up until I got a better understanding of where the deer want to go, where their travel routes are, and where they're bedding, what they're doing. So I just kind of stayed out. When I really was chomping at the bit to go in, I kind of stayed on the outskirts and thought, well, next year I'll really get after it in here and see where they're at. So this year, I plan on going in there to that 40 acres and going down to the creek. I know they're traveling that creek because they come out. Every picture I got of a buck last year, they come out on a low side of the field. They come out in that field, and then they go right back in. About an hour or two later, they'd be traveling back across that sage field where I was, where I sit, and they go right back down into that creek. And it's thick as hair. It's thick as hair on a hog's back down in that creek. So I know they're bedding down there. I know there's water down there. I know they're there. I just need to find out where they're coming from, what their travel routes are. And last year I just didn't want to get in there and spook them out and blow them out. So this year I'm gonna try to get in there and see what I got there. Maybe hang a lock on down in there. Cut me a small little place to go in there. But I'm excited about that though, because last year, like I said, I had good bucks. Several times got the same buck on camera. He was a good deer. He was a 7-point, biggest buck out there. He towered over the rest of them. but I didn't pay him a whole lot of attention because we was after Houdini. So this year I'm hoping he's still there, and I'm excited to get out there and see if I can. He may be a target buck early season if I can get him for me, but he's the only buck that I know of right now that I could go chase if he's still there. Right now I don't have a buck that I'm going to chase this year until I get out and I go to putting my cameras out and I find a buck to chase. But he's the one that I've got my eye on, or he's the one that's in my head that he's going to be a good one that I could chase this year. But whether if he's there, I don't know.
Yeah.
Hadn't got out and looked, but I'm excited about getting in and scouting that property. You know, me and you, I lost a piece of property last year. Guy got sick that gave me gave me permission. So the year before that, I was hunting a pretty good chunk of land. I think it was 200 acres, but it's where me and you was coming down 84 not too awful long ago, and we was talking about oak trees, and we went down that trail, and I took you down that trail, and we come out to a big field on the backside back there, and we were talking about, you know, whatever. But you went down the trail with me. I don't know if you remember us going down off 84, going back in there and scouting a little bit.
I do.
So last year I couldn't hunt that at all. I tried to call the guy that gave me permission, and he had gotten sick, was hospitalized for a little while. I just didn't want to bother him with permission for deer hunting when he was going through a hard time. Yeah. So I did call his wife, ask her if I still had permission to go out there. I try to get up with all these landowners from year to year just to make sure that I still have permission to go in and everything stays the same, you know. Yeah. I did talk to his wife, and she said that he was having a bad time at the moment. He was sick, had been in and out of the hospital, so I just didn't even bother with it. So I lost that property last year. I'm hoping to get that back this year, to get back in there, because I did have a 2 years ago I had a good buck come through. He daylighted all the time. Never did see him while I was there, but he daylighted on my camera all the time. And I would have shot him that year, but what's happened to him in 2 years, I don't know. He may be dead somewhere, but I'd love to get back in there and see if I could get him back on camera. But like I said, I lost it last year. Yeah. Didn't want to bother the guy. I thought that was more important. So, but that's the only two. I got a property in Enterprise that I'm gonna try to hunt. I got permission last year at the end of season again. Now I did walk that property last year a lot. I walked the whole thing, and it's 92 acres. I got permission on it, and it was all clear cut last year. So it was just heads of woods that fingers out into that clear cut. Well, this year I have to go right by it to go to work every morning, and this year the clear cut has gotten pretty thick. So I would say some of it's probably a little overhead high for deer, so it'd be a good bedding area. Last year it was pretty fresh. So me walking across that clear cut last year and looking in them fingers, they could see me coming from a mile off. You know what I mean? So there's no telling what I blew out. I never even hung a stand in there. I put a camera in there one time. I got a picture of a 6-point buck. That was it. Never got anything I really wanted to chase, so I didn't pay it a whole lot of attention last year. But now that there's good bedding area out there, I'm going to hit that hard early season, see what I've got out there.
I'd be excited about that.
Yeah, may even push up a little food plot or something. I don't know. But there's a power line that runs the corner of that property. And on that power line is not at all cleaned out. And it's swampy down there at the very bottom of the hill back there on the back side of the 92 acres. It goes down and it's swampy, and there's a lot of cattails, and there's a lot of things growing under that. And last year, I should have put my camera there, but I found more sign on the other side of the property, so I put my camera on the other side of the property. But this year, I think I'm gonna set a camera there at that swampy area on that power line and just see what I've got crossing there, because last year it looked like cow trails. They were just beating it down going across there. Never did see scrapes, rubs, nothing like that, and it was January where I should have been seeing a little bit of sign somewhere. But I mean, there was just trail after trail after trail after trail. So I'm excited about that one to see what we got there. But other than that, I hadn't got any more new properties from last year. I hadn't really beat the bushes this year to get new properties because I still got properties from last year that I still got permission on.
Same.
That I hadn't been able to get out and really hit the woods hard on. So I'm waiting to hit the woods hard on them. If I don't find anything, then I'll go back to beating the bushes trying to find other properties, you know. But right now I'm chomping at the bit to get out there on them properties that I didn't get to scout very much last year.
Yeah.
Just to see what I got.
And it sounds like, too, the properties that you do have that you haven't scouted a lot yet sound like they'll be really promising.
Yeah.
I'm a little jealous, honestly, that you have a clear cut. There's nothing better than a clear cut on a sunny day, windy. If it's really cold, that's good, too.
Right.
But I just remember several hunts in a hunting club that I was in. There was a clear cut out there about the same age as what you're talking about. And there was one hunt in particular where 2 or 3 deer just would randomly stand up out there, and you had no idea they were bedded there. And it was also overlooking a little travel corridor where they would travel the edge of that clear cut with some tall pines. Man, it was good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you've got a clear cut and you've got trees big enough to get up high enough to be able to see out into that clear cut, you're in the money, because the deer, especially if it's not too cleared out where they can bed in it and without being seen, you're right where you need to be, especially during the rut. I love to hunt a clear cut in the rut. And the reason for that is I can cover so much property and so much land that they feel comfortable in. It's not like running across a sod field where there's absolutely nothing out there to hide the deer. They feel comfortable, even though you can still see them and they don't know you can see them. They feel comfortable walking in their own little space out there. And I've seen more action in clear cuts of natural deer, chasing does, just doing their thing. I've seen bucks in clear cuts where they're thrashing they're throwing the horns to a tree, they're making a rub, they're doing things. They feel good because they think they're hid. But at the same time, all the trees and all the underbrush is so small that you can still see out there with your binoculars, but you got to have your head on a swivel.
Yeah.
You got to have your head on a swivel. Yes.
You got to be watching for sure. Well, there's some things that I want to do different this year, kind of my game plan. I want to take access more seriously than I have in the past, and be really, really cautious of not to bust deer out of these areas that I'm hunting them in. Because I don't think it's been a huge, hindrance to me, but I also think that every little bit can help.
Oh, yeah.
Anything that you can put in, stack the odds in your favor.
Right.
But that's something I could do better on, is planning access better, not spooking deer going in.
Yeah.
And I'm the same as you. I don't really have a buck in mind that I can go after right now as we record this. And what I really want to do is spend more time scouting and looking for a great deer.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do. And whether that's public land or knocking on more doors, I want to find a deer that makes me lose some sleep.
So what are you trying to tell me? You're trying to seek one? Is that what you're trying to do?
There it is. We got it.
I had to say it. Are you trying to seek one deer? Is that what you're trying to do?
That's what I'm wanting to do.
Hey, I'm the same way. I think I'm gonna do. Well, I've always kind of done that. If I
let me stop you right there. You always had one. All right. So, I was thinking yesterday when I was scouting, I thought I need to ask Jantzen what Pope and Young deer he's going to get this year.
Right now, like I said, I've got some in mind, but I don't have any on camera. I don't have anything that I could go chase right now, like you said. I don't have anything like that. Now, I do have some in mind that are going to be really good deer this year if they didn't get killed last year, if they make it through the summer.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that. But I'm like you. I think this year I'm going to – it's kind of tough, but I want to start looking for one specific deer. Now, I've always had – and I guess I've kind of done that to a certain extent, even in years past, even before Seek 1 come out, because I'm not starving by no means. I'm not trying to kill a quantity of deer. I'm trying to kill a quality deer every year. If I can kill one great buck, like I did kicker this past year, I killed a great buck with my bow. That was fine with me. I killed a good quality deer, and then I killed a doe after I killed kicker. I killed a doe for my uncle. He wanted some deer meat. I killed one for him. But this year, I want to try to line up. Last year, I was after kicker, but I was all on kicker. That was it. I was on kicker. That was it. That's all I wanted to hunt all the time was kicker, kicker, kicker. Well, I killed him in 4 days. After I killed kicker, I was lost as a turd in a punch bowl. I didn't know what to do. I was like, well, I don't have anything else to hunt. Mm-hmm. Time fast forward, and then we had pictures of Houdini. Well, Talon was on. He was in the process of moving back home. He had gotten pictures of Houdini. I had pictures of Houdini. He started hunting Houdini. I was hunting a little bit of Houdini, but I wouldn't hunt him hard because I really wanted Talon to hunt him hard, and hopefully Talon would kill him. I'd already killed a good buck that year. But what I want to do this year is I want to line up some good bucks. So even if let's say I got a great buck on a piece of property over here, instead of course, I'm going to hunt that deer hard to the best of my ability, but I want to line up another big buck over here. That way, if I kill him, I also have some potential over here to kill another one. Mm-hmm. I have potential over here to kill another one. I have potential over here to kill another one. Instead of just line up that one deer. Now, if he's a monster, I'm talking about a mega giant, then of course I'll spend all my time on trying to kill that deer that one year. But I always find myself I kill a good deer every year, and then at the end of that, killing that deer when it's all over with, the story's done. I don't have another story to begin with.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You want to have something to keep you going throughout the year.
Yeah.
And see, it's been a couple seasons since I had a deer that I was really, really chasing, like Santa.
Yeah.
Because it took me a little while to kill that deer, and I just got gung-ho on chasing him.
Yeah.
And now Flatbread, I was after him last year and the other one, but I don't know. It was different. I killed Flatbread early.
Right.
To me, it was early in the year.
Now, don't get me wrong, too, though. When I say all that, sometimes when you find a good buck that you really want to kill, it don't happen immediately. You may have to hunt that thing all season long before you finally get a chance to kill him.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that, well, if it don't work out, just leave that buck. I don't care about him no more. I'm going to go over to this buck.
All right, so answer me this, though. You said you killed Kicker in 4 days. How often did you set foot on that property?
All 4 days.
That was it?
Well, we planted food. We planted that power line, but we didn't go down there. When did you plant the power line? We planted the power line the beginning of bow season. I think I killed Kicker on November 1st. That's when I killed Kicker. I started getting pictures of him the end of October. We planted the food plots at the beginning of October, probably October. I think we planted the food plots October 1st, 2nd, 3rd, something like that. It was the first week of October. Okay. We went down, we pushed up the food plot, and we got out of there. I did go down there a few times and broadcast corn and whatnot, but just to get inventory. But
you probably didn't go into the woods. It was just that power line, then you were out.
Power line, that's it. Yeah. I never trudged in the woods, never did anything.
See, that's more in line with what I'm getting at that I want to do this year is I'm probably going to get tongue-tied when I say this, minimally invasive.
Yeah.
Because I have in the past had a tendency to scout the area and then want to keep a check on everything in the area.
Yeah.
And anyway, or going in too much or what I think is probably too much to put bait out, stuff like that. I want to be less invasive this year.
Yeah. Now
be more mindful about the pressure of the deer.
Yeah. Yeah. Now in the past, I've had better luck. For example, 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? Yeah, 2 years ago. I had permission on a piece of property over by my house. All big hardwoods. Beautiful piece of property. Had a creek running right through it. Beautiful creek. Big creek. Never ran dry. Just a beautiful piece of property. I got permission on that. I went in and I hung a lock-on stand. When I hung that lock-on stand, I was in Arkansas duck hunting. I started getting pictures coming in. Bam, bam, bam. It was all bucks. Not a single doe. I said, man, look at this. And good bucks. I killed one. I had an 8-point. I killed one 8-point. But I had a 7-point that was really, really after because you could tell he was a pot-bellied deer. He had a huge neck. I mean, it's early season. he was just an older deer. You knew he was an older deer. But I learned something from that deer. I learned something from that 7-point. The 8-point that I killed was a younger buck, and I kind of kicked myself for shooting him, but I kind of don't because, I mean, he was a good deer. Don't get me wrong. He was a good deer. But I lost permission on that property because two guys from Florida come up and bought the property. So now I'm like, I killed their 8-point that was going to grow up and they was going to be able to kill it. That's kind of selfish of me, so don't hold that against me. But what I learned was that 8-point, there was 2 8-points and a 7-point. The 2 other 8-points you could tell were younger than the deer that I was after, the 7-point. From the time I got the pictures of the 7-point, I said, that's the deer I'm after right there. He gave me something to chase that year. Okay? So I went in and I was hunting that deer. The first day, people say your first sit is going to be your most important sit.
Yep.
Of your hunts, because the more you go in, the more they know you're there. They know what's going on. They're tracking you just like you're tracking them. I got back from Arkansas. It was November. It was the day after Thanksgiving. No, it was the day before Thanksgiving. I got back from Arkansas. The very next morning I got back from Arkansas, I went hunting. Got down in there, didn't see anything, whatever. That very next afternoon, or that afternoon, that same day, I went back in there. I did not sit. I kind of went down there that morning not to really sit and hunt. I just kind of went down there to make sure I had a camera in there. I had 2 cameras in there. I had a camera in there that was running low on batteries. But when I got there that morning, I walked down. I saw a deer in the hardwood standing close to my camera. It was a doe. But when I saw that doe, I just kind of sat back on that hill and just watched my binoculars off into the hardwoods. Didn't really hunt, but I did have my stuff with me. But I didn't really hunt that morning. But I was sitting there thinking, I'm not going to go in. It was late. It was getting daylight before I walked in. I didn't want to go in and spook everything. I didn't know the property very well. So I just watched that doe with my binoculars just to see through the hardwoods what was going on. That was all I saw that morning. I got back to the house. I told my wife, I said, I'm going to go back this afternoon. I'm going to sit. Well, I did. And I actually got in my stand about 2:30 that afternoon. And when I got there, never thought of it, that this is my first hunt. I'd just been getting pictures of it and all that. It didn't run through my mind that this is my first hunt. It's my most important hunt, When I got there, 2:30, about 4:15, I caught movement coming through the woods. And it was that 8-point that was with that 7-point all the time. Well, I watched that 8-point come through. He come down there at about 35 yards and was walking right by me. And I looked back, and I didn't see any other deer, nothing like that.
Yeah.
I looked back, didn't see nothing. I watched him, didn't see anything. I watched him, didn't see anything. He was fixing to go out of range. So I decided to take that 8-point. I think that was a mistake. And the reason I say that is because that first hunt, I probably, if I would have just let him walk by, I think I probably would have seen that 7-point because he had not been hunted, and however long he had not been hunted. And I was the guy in there, and they didn't have a clue what I was, didn't know what was going on. That was my very first hunt. And if I would have just let that 8-point go, I probably would have got a chance at that 7-point that day, later that afternoon, because I knew they were running buddies. They were together in every picture I got. They were together. Mm-hmm. I just didn't see him, and I shot him. So when I shot him, time goes on, 3 or 4 days later, 7 points back in with that other 8-point. 7 points back in, regularly. I mean, he's coming in like clockwork, daylight. I went in, I'd try to hunt him, never see him. I'd go in, try to hunt him, never see him. But every time I'd go in, I'd hunt him today, the next day, the next morning, or the next afternoon. If I couldn't hunt him, he was there. One day I woke up, and it was really, really windy. I'm talking about gusting wind, bark busting cold. I'd been getting pictures of him in the daylight hours. I went down in there, and when I got down in there, I turned around and did not hunt. I walked back out. And when I walked back out, I got to my mom and dad's house. I had all my camouflage on. Dad said, "You didn't go hunting this morning?" I said, "It's too windy. It's sprinkling rain." I said, "I'm just not going to go sit out there and bust them out of there." Dad said, "You ought to be there." I said, "Well, I'm just not going to go in there, and it's gusting wind. I'm just not going to do it." 8 o'clock that morning, wind blowing like crazy, 7-point steps out, perfect daylight. He's right in front of my stand at 20 yards doing his thing.
Really?
I said, I should have been there. The problem is every time I went down the same trail and the same everything. And I think he patterned me like I was trying to. But see, the other 8 points, or the other deer that was with him was younger. But that mature buck never stepped foot out. I'm talking about even in the rut. I saw his other running buddy. I saw him chasing does. I killed the other 8 point he was with. I mean, I saw every other deer other than that 7 point. And when I wasn't there, he was on my camera. If I was there, he was nowhere to be found. If I wasn't there, he was on my camera again. I think what happened was he patterned me like I was trying to pattern him. And I think if I would have tried to go in a different way, or if I would have changed up my travel route going in, I would have had a better chance of seeing him. But the problem is I went down the same trail every time, got in the same shooting house or not shooting house, a lock-on stand, and I sat in the same tree every time. I never changed anything, expecting him to mess up and walk by. But that mature buck never did. All the other bucks that he was with, that was 2 to 3 year old deer, I saw them all the time. But that mature buck never came out.
And it could have been, too, that he was nearby when you shot that 8 point and that scared him just a little bit, where he was just, I'm going to be a little bit more cautious.
That's where I think he noticed that something's in there and it's not normal, and it was me. Yeah. And then that's when, I think when I shot that 8 point, he was somewhere probably around, and it spooked him. So after that first hunt and that first day and I killed that deer, he knew right then, every time I come in here, I got to be cautious. But before that, my very first hunt, if I'd have never killed that 8 point, he didn't know to be cautious. And he may have smelt me, but my wind was good that day. Yeah. Everything was great. I just think that he would have, I think that if I would have never shot that 8 point, he would have never known I was there, and he'd have come by that first day. But I think when I shot him, I spooked him, and he knew then I have to be more cautious when I walk in here. And he started looking to see if he could find me or whatever that was that day that shot that deer. And I just notified him that I was there, and he outsmarted me. That's just all there was to it.
Well, I tell you that the stuff I want to do different this year so that you'll hold me accountable to it. Make sure that I'm doing better on my access and not being so invasive like I can be at times. And I really, really, really want to scout a lot, though, and find a deer to target, one that just really gets me excited because, I don't know, that's just something I want to do. And public land, we scouted public land a while back, and I went and put some cameras out, and I wouldn't say we're in the money yet, but we're getting there.
Oh yeah,
we're getting there.
Oh yeah,
and
it's extremely hard when you get pictures of good bucks. It's extremely hard to not go in there all the time because you want to keep tabs on them. I want to keep tabs on them. I want to pour corn out. Yep. I want to freshen that mock scrape. I wonder if they're using it. I wonder if this.
I think my problem is I'm constantly trying to zero in even farther on them.
Right.
When there comes a point where I think you just got to say, I got enough. Right. He likes his travel route. Yep. I just need to hunt.
If it happens, it happens. Yep. And go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do think sometimes, we do all this research and we do all this scouting and we do a lot of things for a whitetail deer. We do. And do I think that it's wrong to try to figure more things out about a deer and try to do more research and try to figure out their stuff? No, not at all. Absolutely not. I enjoy researching stuff and tracking a deer and trying to keep tabs on a deer. I enjoy that kind of stuff. It's a hobby just as much as hunting is. I enjoy getting pictures of deer just as much as I do as shooting a deer. Or getting a new tract of property, I mean, that's fun to me just to get a new tract of property. It's like shooting a deer. It's like, man, I just got so-and-so. We all call around like, dude, you ain't gonna believe this. What, you killed one? No, I got permission on a new piece of property.
That's how I was the other day.
Don't know what's on it yet, but I got permission, bud.
The other day when I got permission on a new piece, I called you. It's like, dude, there's kudzu everywhere.
Right, exactly.
I was excited.
And we do all this stuff for a deer, but at the same time, I catch myself thinking, I run myself ragged trying to find out what deer are doing, trying to find this, trying to do this, trying to do that, try to kill him. But, do I think we'll ever figure everything out about a deer? No. And the reason for that is still a wild animal. I can try to get his travel route as much as possible. I can try to go in there in his home range. I can go in his core area. I can get as close as I can. But that deer, at any time he wants to, if you're not hunting a high fence, he can go anywhere he wants to go.
He's a wild animal.
He can do whatever he wants to do. He can cross the river and he can be 100 miles off from, the next year or something. So at the same time, I'm like you, I think there's a certain point where you scout, you do the best you can do, you try to pattern them. And we've got a lot of technology these days that a lot of people didn't have back in the day. So do we know more about deer? Yes, absolutely we do. But at the same time, I think at some point you can go too far where you push in, and then next thing you know, you come out very disappointed because you pushed too hard. And like I said, that deer it's a wild animal. It can do anything it wants to do, and they do crazy things sometimes. I mean, that deer could be as like clockwork as you would want a deer to be, and all of a sudden he vanishes and disappears, and nobody's killed him, nobody's done anything. He's just a wild animal. He can do what he wants to.
Yep.
So staying back, knowing he's in there, I've had more luck staying back. Early season, go in, do some scouting, find out where they like to be. I can tell you that there's deer in that piece of property right there, or in that little tract of land, because it's thick as hair on the hog's back. I see trails going in there. I can see all that stuff. It's perfect for a deer to be there. I can tell you there's probably deer in there. Is there a buck in there? I don't know. I set my camera out. I don't push through there. I set my camera out on the outskirts and try to get him to find me or come find a travel route that he comes through, coming by me. But I've had more luck not pushing into that thick stuff to try to find out what's in there. Mm-hmm. I've had better luck staying on the outskirts and catching them as they come out of their stuff. But I think we can push too hard and try to find too much out about a deer to the point where they, we push them out.
I will say if you do push in really aggressively like that, go ahead and hang and hunt.
Yes, absolutely.
Because it goes back to what you're saying, first time in is the best time.
That's right.
So anyway, so here's a question. You said something about, technology. I'm curious. Are your cameras all cell cameras, or do you run any SD card cameras?
Now they're all cellular. I had one, I think, 2 years ago that I kept down there on my creek because it's easy to just go check it real quick.
Yeah.
But now I got all Moultrie Edge is what I cellular.
About
every
how
one
many
of
do
them.
You have?
6. Why?
You can't hide money, I tell you what.
What you talking about, man?
So when you put the cameras out, are most of those cameras you got like one per property?
That's another thing I want to change that this year. I want to go into a property and I want to put more cameras out on that property to find out where they're coming from and what they're doing on that property. Gotcha. Because in the past, I do exactly what you just said.
One camera per property, put some bait out to see what's there.
To see what's there.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that's enough homework to find something out,
And two, like, here's what I'm also thinking about that is you go and you put the corn out and yes, it does get inventory. And we've talked about what I think possibly are some drawbacks to baiting. But then also you're throwing the deer off their natural route. Mm-hmm. It'll last for as long as that corn is there.
Yep.
And then
back to normal.
What have you learned?
And you have nothing.
And
he's there, or he's there from time to time, but that's it. You don't know where he's coming from.
The reason I asked that about the cameras is that's what I did on this new property. Didn't put any bait out because I'm trying to avoid that this year. Mm-hmm. And I took my cameras. I have 8 or 9. I have 8 or 9 cameras, cell cameras, and I don't pay for every one of those.
I was about to say, what you talking about? Money.
Listen, this is my
game
plan. Don't holler
money to me.
This is my game plan, though. I run Spy Point.
Yeah.
All right. A lot of people hate on Spy Point. I've never had an issue with them. Mm-hmm. And the best thing that I like about them is they offer that free plan.
Yeah.
Now you only get $100 a month, but anyway, I will take those and put them up on what I think are some travel routes, and I'm on that free plan.
Yeah.
And if something comes by, good. I know that's a
right.
a travel route that I can use. And that's what I did on this piece of property. I put 4 or 5 of them up on different routes and 2 track roads. And I really do feel like I have a good understanding of how they like to travel that property now.
Right.
And anyway, that's what I want to keep doing.
Yeah.
But with that being said, majority of my cell cameras are out now. So I'm like, well, I can't buy more cell cameras because that's just not.
Yeah.
I don't think it's wise. So now I'm looking at SD card cameras and thinking how I can incorporate those.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I
haven't really figured it out. I'm still kind of brainstorming because I feel like I'm going to be, again, breaking my new rule of not being so invasive.
Right. That's what I was fixing to say.
What
makes me nervous about the card cameras is going in all the time and checking it. What I would do, though, is if I went in to check it, I would use another route to go in to sit. That way they have no clue. You know what I mean? Changing things like that up kind of gets them off their rocker. I do believe that. But so last year, the reason I want to run more cameras on one tract of property is because last year we had a good buck. He was going from one field to the other field. Well, at that one piece of property, we had a camera on the power line, and we had a camera in that field. In the afternoons, he'd be in that field, up top, on the north end of the property. In the mornings, he'd be making his way. In the mornings, I guess at night, he made his way back down to the power lines, and in the mornings, we get pictures of him in the power lines. And he did that every day. But if I'd have never had 2 cameras out there, I would have never known that he was in that top field.
I tell you what's going to happen this year.
Yeah.
You're going to run multiple cameras on this property, on your properties, and you're going to come at me like, man, we killed this deer, but I don't think he's been there this whole time. I think he come. You're going to say, Taylor Weeks, you were right about that.
Yeah. Hey, and you may be. I have no idea.
I'm joking. I'm messing with you.
I mean, I don't know. The reason I say that specific thing that I said about do I think that a deer can come at night or be on your property at night and then be 2 miles away in the mornings or during the daylight hours? Absolutely, I do. But the only thing that what I think about is when I'm going down the road or I'm walking a piece of property or I'm doing whatever I'm doing, how many big bucks do you see out in the open or you go by some hardwoods and do you ever see a big buck just standing out there looking at you? Very seldom. Other than at night, early in the mornings, breaking daylight, you may see one crossing through a field or something like that. But most of the time, they stay in their little core area and where they're comfortable, and they stay in the thick stuff. I can't tell you how many times I've walked a piece of property and never saw a buck, never saw anything, spooked a few does or something like that, but I never saw a good buck. I throw a camera out there, and all of a sudden at night, there's a monster. There's a big buck out there. Well, where was he at when I walked around that piece of property? And then I go to looking on that piece of property of all the places that I did not walk, and most of the stuff that I did not walk was the hard places to walk.
Oh, yeah.
In the thick stuff. I didn't want to go in there because that's too thick. It's hot today. I don't want to go in there. I'm just not going to walk and trudge through that crap. Well, I guarantee you he was in there. So that's the kind of stuff that I look at, and that's why I say that a deer can be on your property, and you just never saw him until one day he showed up. But he was on your property the whole time. You just didn't know it. Now, if you own a piece of property, if you own 80 acres and you walked every bit of that piece of property that you could think of, unless he comes in one day and he takes up a home range right there on your property and you've scouted it before he did that, then, do I think he's coming from a mile off or 2 miles off or wherever or coming from the neighboring property? Absolutely. You've walked every inch of that piece of property. But that 200 acres that we got permission on down in Elbon, close to the
it's all situational
river. Yeah. That's why I say that Houdini could have been on our property all that time, and we just never, because there's still property down there that I've never walked. If you go past that power line there, I've never been down in there close to the river. This year I do want to do that. I want to go down to the river and see what's traveling that river. But I've never been past that power line. And there's 56 acres that I've never walked on that piece of property. And every buck that we've killed come out of that 56 acres coming from that river. But I've never walked down in there. Never walked down in there. I've always stayed on the high side of the property and walked all that up there and all that stuff, but never been down into where the river is.
Have you been following CWD at all?
Another thing I want to do is I thought about putting in a boat in the river and instead of coming from the road this year into that property, is coming from the backside of that property out of the river, and coming from a boat from the river early one morning and coming up into that and trying to get up in there. But that's just a different travel route like we was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
But anyways, what was you saying?
Have you been following CWD at all?
A little bit. I've heard a lot of people talk about it on social media and all, but I know that it's a threat down here, but I hadn't really tracked it probably like I should.
I don't know. That's just something that I don't know if it's something that is being blown out of proportion, but like it really kind of worries me. You know, as far as what I know about it right now, because we're like, so EHD, which I know we don't have a huge problem or a big problem with that at all, really here in the South. It like does a lot of damage to the deer herd right then. But this is just kind of like a slow infection, and there's no cure for it. And basically, it's going to really hurt the older class of deer. If it becomes widespread, you're going to have a lot of young deer because it takes a while for them to die from it.
Oh, really?
Anyway, and it's in North Alabama. But last year, I know there was I forget the name of that county that's directly below us in Florida. There was a deer that was roadkill. They tested it, and it was CWD positive.
Really?
And I just don't see how it's not here.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, but I just don't see how it's not here by now.
I guarantee you it is. We just don't know about it.
And then it brings into question, like, well, is that meat safe to eat?
Right. I don't know.
Nobody really knows, because there's reports out there that it doesn't harm you, and then there's reports out there that it does harm you, that somebody, got sick from it.
So the only time that we've ever ran into something like that was about 7 or 8 years ago. Dad was hunting at that property we was talking about, where up around Montgomery County, and he was sitting in a stand one day, early one morning, about 8 o'clock. He heard some god awful racket coming down a creek, and it was in the creek. So he thought, really he didn't know what it was. He looked behind him, and it was a doe running down that creek in the water. And what she was trying to do is she was running down the creek crazy, just going crazy, running down the creek trying to go up the banks on each side. And every time she'd try to go up that bank, she'd fall backwards, bam, hitting the creek. Then she'd try to get back up, and she'd try to go up the bank again. She'd fall backwards, bam. She'd fall back down in that water and fall in that water and fall in that water, and finally got down there to where Dad was, and Dad got out of the stand, walked up to her, and she was just like out of breath, just gasping for air. And she'd try to get away from Dad, and she'd fall over. Try to get away from Dad and fall over again. So Dad shot her. Pow! Killed her. Didn't have any gun marks, nothing. Dad thought, well, maybe she got attacked by something, or back hips were broke, whatever. Not a broken bone on her. He actually cut her head off and took her to the lab in Elba for them to test it. I'll have to ask him about what the results were, but I can't remember. But she had an infection in her head of some type that messed with her brain. And it could have been early. I don't know. I didn't know a whole lot about the CWD back then, EHD and all that stuff back then. But that deer was acting crazy, going nuts. I mean, acting just like the deer you see on social media that has like CWD or EHD or something like that. They're just like out of it, just don't have a clue where they're at. Look like a zombie deer. That deer did the same thing on Dad. And
I guess what worries me the most is, like, if you talk to, because I've talked to biologists about it and game wardens about it, and they just don't know. You can ask questions like, well, will that hurt our deer population? We don't really know.
Yeah.
Well, is it going to hurt the older class? We don't really know.
Right.
We're assuming so, because, that's what it's done in other places. And then in most of the places, there's some rednecks that'll probably hoop and holler at this, but the biologist I talked to, he was saying that, in most places when CWD is found, it's pretty much just like open season. Shoot as much as you can, really no limits. That way it slows the spread.
Yeah.
Where have we heard that before?
Oh, man. I hope it don't come. I hope that don't.
I've been worried about it, but I'm starting
know.
to see chatter on social media that it's, I don't want to compare it to COVID, but I'm starting to see where people are starting to compare it to COVID.
Yeah.
Where like they don't think it's as big of a deal, and I hope that's the case. I don't know, but from everything that I've seen, I don't know, it kind of worries me.
Yeah.
The years ahead.
I don't know. I don't know enough about it to speak on the actual disease. That's just the only encounter we've ever had with a deer, but that was probably 9 years ago, back before I ever even paid any attention to CWD or EHD. So maybe it's something that's been around for a long time. Maybe we're doing, but
could be.
I don't know.
One guy I talked to, the biologist.
Yeah.
I asked him, I said, would you eat any deer meat? No. It was a quick no.
Yeah.
Not at all. I talked to a game warden, and I said, would you eat deer meat if it came back positive for CWD? Yeah.
Yeah.
You could tell he was not worried. He said, man, there's so much stuff. If you got a deer tested, he said there would be so many things that would come back on it.
Yeah.
He said, just cook it, eat it.
Yeah.
So
I can't help but think, though, if you cook it really good, it's probably going to kill whatever's there. But
isn't it 160 where, like, it's
we
bacteria
did not eat
killing?
that doe that shot that was acting crazy like that. So, I mean.
Isn't it like 160 or 165 that you have to cook meat to for it to be to
safe.
Kill the bacteria?
Yeah.
All right. I've accidentally cooked deer meat to 160, 165, and that's like boot leather.
Yeah.
And
it ain't no good.
It ain't no good.
Nah, I don't blame you.
Now, hamburger meat, that's different, but.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I like my meat a little medium rare, so if I can't do that, then I'm probably not going to eat it if it has a disease because it ain't going to be no good to me no ways.
Yeah.
I don't want to eat it.
Well, is there anything else going on? You're getting ready for deer season. Anything else on your mind? I think I pretty much covered everything on my stuff too.
Yeah.
The only other thing that I will add that I'm wanting to do this year is I'm wanting to go back and look at dates that I've killed deer on properties. For example, there was a property there where I rattled a deer in last year, and I want to go back, similar date, pre-rut time frame, and rattle again, see if I can get some more luck.
See if it happens.
Stuff like that.
I've looked back on dates before. I sent you the dates. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool.
And where we're getting that from is there's a podcast that I sent you where the guy's tactic was 100% dates because he's very limited on the time that he can get into the woods. And he goes through and he'll put cameras up on these properties on rub lines. And he keeps the cameras there all year. And when the rut comes around, he sees what time frame bucks are using that travel route. And then the following year, he goes in there in that time frame. And
usually has luck doing it.
And he has Yeah. And there's been a lot of praise, I guess, over that podcast since he released it. And a lot of people are checking dates and they're realizing, hey, I've been killing these deer.
Yeah.
Same dates every year.
Yeah, I did it. I went back, I checked it. I think I killed a buck on like January 18th. The next year I killed one on January 18th. The next year I killed one on January 19th. The next year I killed one on December 1st. And then I killed one on December 2nd. It was just like right there, bam, bam, bam. And I never paid any attention to that until that guy said that in the podcast. And I started looking back and I said, daggone.
So I want to utilize that this year.
Yeah.
And anyway. Well, I think we're at a point where we can wrap up. And going forward, this podcast will release before Mason and Parker's. So just because it's easier to edit.
Yeah.
I'm having a little bit of a time on that one since we had some SD card malfunctions. But anyway, so you can look for some 2 new special guests in the episode after this one. And everybody seemed to like Zane Lindsay's episode.
Yeah.
And he wants to get back on and do some debate stuff with all three of us.
Right.
And I told him that would be good.
Oh, yeah.
So, anyway, that's kind of what's coming up next, and we'll do some more deer season stuff, getting ready for that. And
another thing before we cut it off that I want to do this year is I want to wear more Magellan camouflage. And I think I'm gonna get me some Wolverine boots or some Justin boots. That's what I'm gonna get me.
To give context, when we recorded the podcast with Mason and Parker, I asked about Sitka gear. Is it really worth it? And you'll have to check out the next podcast coming up with those two guys on. But Parker turned into a meteorologist on what all the Sitka can withstand.
Tune in to
hilarious.
see what Sitka can protect you from. Tune in on that one. Lord have mercy.
It was hilarious. So be looking for that one. It's a good episode.
Yeah.
And we need to get them back on to a turkey episode as well.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, hey, one last thing, and then we really will wrap this up. But I thought it'd be cool to include this. We recorded this little conversation one time before in my shop, and by the end of it, we were sweating like pigs. And we both said, we can't.
We can't. Look like we jumped in a pool. Shirt soaking wet. I look like I'd weed eated, then come in and wanted to do a podcast.
And the whole, I'm propped up on the table the whole podcast so that my shirt doesn't stick to my stomach. Now, that's how I was avoiding the sweat stains. But anyway,
while talking, I'm over there. There's beads. You said dry your face off. Dry your face off. We'll cut out when we use the towels.
We're so low budget.
Oh, man.
Which is a shame because we had really good conversation during
we
that.
did.
It was a really good episode.
It was.
But anyway, in that podcast, we were talking and we kind of dropped a little Easter egg, if you remember.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of want to do that on this episode too.
Yeah.
Mainly just to see if anybody is making it to the end of these
far.
podcasts. And the Easter egg that we had in that little thing, it flowed into our conversation during that podcast a lot better than it is right here. But we were talking about like cover scents to use while you're deer hunting. And anyway, I'd come across, supposedly if you look it up online, it's been a Southern thing for a long time. I had never heard of it. You had never heard of it. But I came across something that supposedly, I don't know all the correct terms to use, but basically you use this product, deer smells it, it makes their receptors, I guess, in their nose swell up where it's harder for them to smell.
Yeah.
Therefore,
clogs the pores or something like that.
And it's like the equivalent. I feel like more people know about this. It's the equivalent to bleach and a dog.
Yeah.
A bleach will take the dog's ability to
stop up them senses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing for deer, but this naturally occurring thing will kind of jam up their nose, and it's not nose jammer. That's just I tried to avoid saying that, but it's not nose jammer. But if you're curious on what that is, shoot one of us a message.
Yeah.
And we can tell you what that is, and you can do your own research on it. I got some, I don't know, I've been thinking about it more and more. And the way that it supposedly works, you're taking away a deer's main sense.
Yeah.
I think they use their nose and they rely on it more than any other sense.
Than anything else, yeah.
And I'm thinking we rely on vision more than anything else. If all of a sudden somebody took my vision away, I think I'd freak out.
100%.
So
it definitely make it easier for them to kill me.
Yeah.
If they were trying to.
So now I'm starting to second guess it, but I still want to try it.
Yeah.
Anyway, because I'm wondering if it really does work.
Maybe we could try that. Maybe we could do an experiment on it.
Let's do
we've
it.
got a piece of property that don't have a whole lot of anything on it that we don't really, but we have a lot of does, or we have, some small bucks on or something like that. Maybe we could do a little experiment and see how they react to it before we put it out on a deer that we,
but on
that one that we're trying to get after.
Yeah. On the flip side of that, it's natural.
Yeah, that's true.
It's natural. So, I don't know. Shoot one of us a message
Yeah.
if you're interested. You may have no plans of using that whatsoever. Wouldn't blame you. But you may just be curious as to what we're talking about. Anyway, shoot us a message. We'll tell you what it is. I mainly just wanted to throw that out there to see who's making it to the end of these podcasts.
Yeah.
If anybody.
Yeah.
If you did make it to the end, be sure to share the podcast with a buddy, like, subscribe, do all that stuff according to whatever platform that you're listening or watching us on. And I think that's a wrap.
That's it.